Welcome to another episode of T-Dub's Film Room, brought to you by thebarnauburn.com. And today's episode is part 1 in the commit breakdown series. And we're looking at Auburn football's latest commitment for the 2026 class, inside offensive lineman Parker Pritchett, a kid with a lot of toolsy traits, a lot of upside. Let's take a look at the film. All right, first thing to do here is to look at the on-3 profile for Parker Dooley Pritchett. 6'4", 310. He's from Carver High School, Columbus, Georgia. Again, inside offensive line, so guard primarily. 3-star industry ranking. Big spread on the opinion of this kid right now. Rivals ranks him the highest, 150th overall player in the country. That's a great ranking. 4-star on ESPN, 3-star on 247 on 3. On Rivals, 15th best inside offensive lineman, 21st best prospect in the state of Georgia, so that's really strong there. On 3 has him at the 103rd inside offensive lineman in the country. So again, big spread. You still got the spring eval period, you still got summer camp circuits, all that kind of stuff, and then the senior film. So all this stuff can change, but based on just kind of where he's at right now, the offer list, I think he's going to end up probably being a 4-star player by the time it's all said and done. Good prospect, not an elite prospect on paper. All right. But let's jump into the film and see what we got. All right, so the caveat with really any of these kids that we're going to break down all spring, all summer, fall, as they happen, okay, is it is not a scientific method that you use necessarily to project a 16, 17-year-old kid and how he's going to perform by the time he's a 21-year-old starter, potentially in the SEC or an NFL draft prospect. That is just, it's a difficult thing. It is specifically a difficult thing to do when you're talking about the developmental positions like the offensive line. An imperfect science for sure. So you've got to have a framework or some rules that you kind of go by, right? So when you talk about the offensive line, obviously one thing in the NFL they look at, offensive tackles, what do they look at? Arm length, wingspan, that kind of stuff, right? For inside offensive linemen, this is kind of where it gets personal for me, how I look at this stuff. One thing I like to see is, typically if you're talking about an inside offensive line prospect that's in high school, that means it's like the biggest person on the team. You're talking like the biggest mass. Sometimes they can have some bad weight at that time in their life, totally normal. What I like to see out of inside offensive line prospects are athleticism, a given that they have a big frame, all right? And then I like to see athleticism, and I like to see mobility. And when I say mobility, what I really think of are ankle bend, knee bend, and hip bend. Okay. I started this film breakdown about, halfway-ish through his highlight tape. Not because this is like the best highlights necessarily, but looking at his stance. All right. So the ankle bend, the knee bend, the hip bend, the flat back, his hands on the ground. So that's more projectable to what his position is going to be at Auburn than he would be, as a left tackle in a 2-point stance. It's just not going to happen. So even looking at some of his counterparts here, the right guard's a big guy, right? So you kind of see that rounded back. It's because we're dealing with some hip mobility issues, some tightness, probably a little bit of stiffness in the ankles, that kind of stuff too. So I love this position for a 6'4", 310-plus guy playing in his junior year of high school. He's able to get up out of his stance here, fire off the ball pretty well, all right, rolls into his hips, keeps his feet driving, and then he finishes the guy obviously, again, he's not blocking a 300-pound SEC defensive lineman, all right? He's going up the competition that he's going up against in high school, it's fine. All right, kind of the next play here, same kind of deal, good stance, all right, drives the feet, finishes the guy. That stuff right there, to me, is, and along with his athleticism, so the way he can move in space and control his body and all that kind of stuff, we'll see that first couple plays here. All right, left tackle getting out, killing that poor corner in the boundary there on the tunnel screen. The mobility, the way he can, carry the weight and his frame as it is right now, and then his movement, all right, even the way he kind of falls and rolls there as just an athletic profile, that to me is his best set of traits. All right, quick, flipping the hips, getting parallel with the line of scrimmage, and then being able to turn up field, finish on a second-level defender there. He's going to be pulling a lot. Hopefully we see the Auburn offense get a little bit more versatile in the run game. That's something I like to see personally. a little more gap scheme, getting some guys on the move, some offensive linemen. So hopefully that's a projectable thing. But his movement skills for, again, a bigger guy, an inside offensive lineman, and his just overall athleticism and mobility, I think, are his best traits. Now, this is something I pointed out. So I did a top 10 offense and top 10 defense kind of pre-spring 2026 prospect list. So the top 10 guys on offense, top 10 guys on defense that I was thinking in terms of guys Auburn going after. Parker was number 8 on my top 10 offensive prospects list. A loaded list. I mean, you're talking, C.D. Morgan and Tristan Keys and, all those guys, Cooper, the running backs, all those guys. So pretty loaded list. He was number 8 on my list because I do think he's got a really projectable skill set. But this is a particular play that I highlighted as, this is the stuff that he's going to have to work on. And so we see, again, line up not against a 300-pound offensive lineman. The feet stop on contact. All right, now, he finishes the play, and that's great. But the feet stop on contact. He's a little bit high. The defensive lineman's lower than him, that kind of thing. All right, we will run this. All right, so watch the feet, boom, stop, and then he's able to, regenerate and get him going again. But, a really clean rep from maybe an elite high school offensive line prospect would be almost what you see when you're driving a sled, like old school driving a sled. Okay, you're firing off the ball, the feet never stop, boom, we're driving, we get it, rolled through the hips, good extension in the arms, and you just, punish that dude against you. That would be, that kind of next step between what we think is a good prospect and an elite prospect. I think Parker's a good prospect. But, again, he's not supposed to come in here and start year one. It's not, that's not what anybody, I don't think, including him, would probably anticipate. So he's going to have a few years, 2-3 years in the weight room. You think about some of the guys that's on Auburn's roster right now that's in that situation. Your Tyler Johnsons, your favorite Edwins, and then, kind of that young crop of dudes that they pulled in last year. So he's a part of that young high school developmental system that I think they're trying to build while supplementing through the portal. And, it's going to take him a few years just like everybody else. But I do like his frame. I like his athleticism, his kind of natural ability. This is a really good shot right here. Maybe rewind that. This is a really good shot right here. Just that angle, so that kind of angle of force production in the ground, that, again, you have to have some ability, some mobility in your joints to be able to get that angle. And really when I see this right here, and even I think the following play, these are a couple of the plays that when I see give me my comparison of a current Auburn football player. This one right here especially, that looks like Jeremiah Wright to me. So that's my comp for Parker Dooley Pritchett. Is Jeremiah Wright. If you think about it, a guy that, needed a few years in the system. We kind of flip-flopped him on positions. He went D-line, O-line, back and forth, had some injuries, but developed into a multi-year starter on our offensive line, a guy that at this point is a leader on the team. So, does Jeremiah Wright project as a high NFL draft pick? No. But if you can develop into a multi-year starter at a place like Auburn, even though we've been kind of trash the last few years, then, you're saying that you're a pretty darn good football player. So that's my comp for him. I think that's a pretty good one. Again, it's always hard with developmental positions. That's just a general given. But a guy that has some traits that I really like, that, as long as he works hard, gets in the weight room, develops for a few years, I think he could develop to a really nice player. All right, last piece here, and I'm just going to do this with all these future commit breakdown videos as well, is kind of what's the outlook for them getting on the field early, or, how long is it going to take? This is kind of where I see our offensive line settling in, at least moving into, the next few weeks. We're probably going to have some portal movement. I already removed, Braden Joyner here. So, you got your starters for sure this year, your 5, and then you got, Too Tall is kind of probably the 6th guy at this point. Xavier, Dylan, Connor Liu, I know he's a junior. Jeremiah Wright, Mason Murphy, Too Tall. And then, your initial guys off the interior, probably DeAndre Carter, maybe Dylan Cinda, that kind of stuff. So maybe a portal guy. But, DeAndre Carter definitely is a guy that projects, by all accounts, as a future starter on this offensive line. Connor Liu, Cale Ellis will kind of man the center position for now. The right guard position, or at least what I'm calling the right guard position, is definitely something that, I think Auburn will need to work on. I'm keeping Ty Buster as a guard. I know he's worked at left tackle this spring. I think that was more out of necessity. He's listed at 6'3" on the roster. I don't see a 6'3" left tackle. I mean, we did that with Dylan Wade out of necessity, but I don't think that's really long-term where they want to go. So I see him still slating in as a guard. Maybe Ty Buster moves over to right guard and kind of supplements that. But, there's going to be some guys here, and of course they're going to supplement through the portal. There's going to be some guys here that are going to develop, just ahead of where a guy like Dooley Pritchett would come in. But, they're gonna build through the high school ranks as much as they can, supplement through the portal. I think he can be in that mix. I would say, year 2 through 4. That's going to be his time frame. That's just the way I see it. So we're gonna look at the position groups as we go through, kind of commitment by commitment, and see how they project, at least early on, next couple years. But just be ready for a lot more content. Obviously, off-season content. We're looking at commit breakdowns. We looked at some games last year, the Why Auburn Lost series. I've got a couple more games to do there, and a lot more content that we'll be able to put out to kind of keep you guys fed, through the spring, through the summer. Always be locked in to thebarnauburn.com, and then obviously stay locked in to the YouTube feed here, and T-Dub's film room here. But as always, I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time.